This computer. All right, guys, welcome to another Wednesday Zoom call. This is Kelly, Dr. Kelly with Connor's Clinic. I'm going to be presenting on what's called liver directionality. So spring is in the air. We are in full-blown spring now. And when I think of spring, I think of spring cleaning, unfortunately and fortunately. But I think of how important it is that we maintain healthy bodies, and that spring is usually a time that I like to do a cleanse. So we're going to talk about a little bit of different concept that has to deal with what we need to do before we start getting into detoxification. So I'm just going to get started. So this presentation is called Liver Directionality, Amending and Maintaining Phase 2.5 and 3 of Detoxification. Now, if you've listened to any of Dr. Connor's videos, he talks a lot about detoxification, how important it is, and he talks about the phases. So traditionally, we are taught about phase 1 detox and phase 2 detox and how important those are. So we're familiar with those. So I was looking through the research about 2 weeks ago, and I noticed that there was this really important new research finding. I don't really know how new it is per se, but I know that in all the functional medicine training I've had, that I had not heard of it. And I ran into Dr. Connor's office and I started to present the science behind it. And for the first time in my life, and I've known Dr. Connors for almost 5 years, he actually was surprised, and he didn't know already the concept. Usually when I go in and I run in and find something new that I think is new, he usually graciously listens to me and then tells me a couple more things about it. So we thought this was really cool. And he alluded to it last week about this concept. So I was going through the research and I came up where I found this principle, and I'm going to talk about it. And then you can tell your friends about it. And I coined it what's called phase 2.5. So no one's really talked about this phase 2.5 yet. And I think that it's a really important concept, and you'll understand why it needs its own little name. It needs to be called 2.5. And then we're going to talk about phase 3 detoxification as well. So let's just kind of do an overview of detox. So basically phase 1, we're using oxidative processes, oxidative reduction or redox, and we're also using hydrolysis. So it's basically just getting toxins ready to get out of the body. It kind of makes them actually a little bit more toxic, but that's good, because then phase 2 can come along and tag them. And phase 2 is usually glutathione, and you've always heard of that. It's our master antioxidant molecule and master detoxification. So the glutathione's got to be in check. And then the other two phase 2 processes are called sulfation and glucuronidation. Again, that's just getting toxins out. So phase 1 and phase 2, every cell has on it this channel, this protein channel called an MRP1 channel. And that's basically an exit for all the toxins. Okay, so the toxins make their way, and we don't really want a whole lot of them to go to the skin, but we do know that our skin is a detoxification organ. So if that's overwhelming, people can get skin issues. So the majority of the toxins, we really want them via the blood. So this is blood right here. We want them to go to the liver and to the kidneys, and then we want them to go to the toilet, eventually make their way into the toilet, out of our bodies, so that our bodies are less burdened with toxins. And again, I think of spring cleaning. I think this is a great time to hone in on this. So let's zoom in here. So again, our 2 major detox organs that we're going to talk about are the liver and the kidneys, specifically the liver. Okay, so let's hone in. Let's blow up, per se, a liver cell. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on in this liver cell, but the most important part is that you see over here on the left that here's the blood right here. So those are those toxins running down, and this little gobbly-doo here that's black that's hooked onto this. This is, what a toxin, let's just say that's a toxin. So it's going into the liver cell, And sometimes it has to go through phase 1 and phase 2 in the liver cell, but because most of the majority of that is done in the liver. That's our major detox organ. So it's going through the liver. Okay, so let's trace it. Here it is there, and then it's red, and then it's black. And then it's exiting through the MRP2 protein channel right there. So that transporter right there. So it's going to go into the bile. Okay, super important. So it came through the blood, went through the hepatocyte, goes through the MRP2 into the bile right there. So these little green things right here, those are bile salts. And bile salts these go hand in hand, so that when a toxin exits, the bile salt is going to be escorted out with it so that it can combine and get excreted into the small intestine. Another important piece in this hepatocyte is this PC right here. That stands for phosphatidylcholine. So the phosphatidylcholine is also excreted with the toxin and the bile, and it gets excreted so that the bile can maintain its fluidity, so that it's not just stuck. And what happens when your bile gets stuck is you get stones. So PC is really, really important. And there's a big genetic defect that I see just a ton of. I actually have homozygous where I don't make this very well. So I don't have a gallbladder. I actually had it removed when I was 20. And I betcha if I just would have been put on some phosphatidylcholine, I bet I would still have a gallbladder. But now I do. I take a lot of PC. So, okay, so you need the PC and you need the bile salts, and they exit into the bile flow right here all together. Very happy. Okay, let's get into the bile, and then let's be excreted into the small intestine and make our way out. So that's the normal process of how toxins get out. Now you could say that this is also a kidney cell, but you change it. It'd be blood. It'd be going through. Also be going through the MRP2, but that's actually in the proximal tubule of the kidney, and then it goes into your urine. So the reason why I think this is important is because it shows how important the bile and the PC is. So again, we're moving out and down. That's the directionality. That's what we're terming this directionality. So 4 major functions of bile. I think bile is just very underrated in how important it is, and how when it gets stuck, one of the bile's major jobs is, let's just skip down here, is to kill off bad microbes. So God gave us this beautiful, really, really acidic stuff called bile that gets excreted into the GI system so that it maintains that really good balance of bugs, of that microbiome. You don't have any toxins in there, which is really nice if you have something that the bile is going to go through and keep it really nice and acidic. So I have this hunch that people who are not moving their bile, there's a big chance that they're going to have what's called SIBO, so small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth. And it's really no surprise. If you don't move that bile down, if it's stuck for a couple reasons I'm going to show you in a little bit, it's stuck right here, it's not moving. Let's say that you don't have enough phosphatidylcholine, or your bile salts aren't moving, or you're inflamed, you're going to be at risk for some gut issues. So that's one of the jobs bile does. Another job is fatty acid metabolism. We all know that. Everyone says, okay, well, bile is needed to emulsify our fat. So pretty much that's usually one of the ones people can identify. But another underappreciated function of our friend bile is the excretion of waste products. And I just showed you up here how we're going into the blood and then we're going out through the bile. So excretion of the waste products is something that is really important, and I think that it's underappreciated with the bile. And then it also maintains blood sugar, the metabolism of it, which is actually, I did not know that. So that was new to me, and the function of bile. So bile is super important. So, we said that it digests our fat, it regulates the glucose and cholesterol metabolism. And then again, this is something new for me too. I had an idea that this happened in the liver, but it actually is responsible for a thyroid hormone activation through the bile caniculi there. So really important. It's one of those foundations of health that I think that we really need to triple check sure that it's working well. And if you've been in the clinic and if you've been tested, we make sure that we're looking for liver stagnation, bile stagnation. So you're probably in good shape. But again, it's spring, so we think of, okay, are we making sure that this is really really in good shape? So and we talked about the GI flora and the motility, and how if you don't have that bile flowing, that I really think that that's one of the key reasons people get recurring SIBO, and the leaky gut kind of plays along with that. And then we talked about how the bile salts combine with the cholesterol and the phospholipids to get toxins out of the liver, into the intestines, and then into the toilet, or reabsorbed via the enterohepatic circulation. And we really don't want the or part. We really want the toxins to get to get to the toilet. And when we have that reabsorption through the enterohepatic circulation, so that's just a fancy word for the blood flow to the colon and the large intestine and the colon area. So then we get it, we're actually just reabsorbing our toxins. So the toilet is where we want the toxins. So what limits bile acid production and secretion? This is a really good question. So the two that we want to focus on today are endotoxins. So basically that's when you have a bad gut. That's another word for endotoxin is lipopolysaccharide. So we want to make sure that your diet is optimized and that you're not eating anything that's inflammatory to your GI tract, or if you have an infection in there, that we've cleaned it up. And the other one I want to focus on is inflammation. So inflammation in your body will produce cytokines that induce cholestasis. Now, cholestasis is a fancy word for decreased bile flow, or your bile's not flowing. So really looking at that inflammation piece, that's where I started digging into the scientific research, because I thought, okay, well, if we're inflamed, which 90% of the population seems to be inflamed with the diet that we're the standard American diet, and also we just live in a very toxic world. So inflammation, it produces those cytokines that induce, and I was like, induce bile stagnation. I'm like, that's really interesting. So that cholestasis also induces an inflammatory response. So you can see how that's a vicious circle. So we're going around and around. If we have inflammation, then we're causing bile stasis, and then the bile stasis causes inflammation. So we got to get to the bottom of this. And then what can happen there is that those bile salts can actually accumulate. They can get stuck in that cell, in that hepatocyte, in that liver cell, and that can cause them to die. So let's take a different look. So now I'm going to show you this one again. Okay, that was our original one. Let's show you the same hepatocyte, the same liver cell, when we're under an inflammatory state. So here's what happens is that you have those toxins, and they're trying to go through this organic acid transport protein. So that's the normal way. Okay, so they're trying to get in right here. But what happens is when they get in, they can go through phase 1 and they can go through phase 2. But what happens is, this is the drum roll, is that the channel, that protein transporter, which they usually go through to get into the bile during an inflammatory state, this channel is pulled from the membrane. So what I like to call phase 2.5, that's where the toxins go from the middle of the hepatocyte into the bile. That's a huge step. It takes a lot of energy for your body to push that through. Phase 2.5 under an inflammatory state doesn't even happen. It can't even happen. So what happens is all these toxins, they start accumulating in the hepatocyte, and the hepatocyte's like, red alert, this is not good, this is not good. So what it does is it starts transporting the toxins back into the blood. And it also says, what do we do with all these bile salts? And it starts putting the bile salts in the blood. So we have this liver directionality going the wrong way. And I figured out that when this is happening, this is what I think is called a Herc's reaction. And I'm sure we can talk about that when I open up for questions. But what better way to depict this is that Herc's reaction is we're pushing, typically we're giving the patient a lot of phase 1 and phase 2 upregulators because we think they need to detox. Well, guess what? If you don't have your inflammation under control first, you're going to put those toxins right back in your blood because they have no exit strategy whatsoever. So this concept of losing our phase 2.5 and going into the bile, into the small intestine, that's phase 3. Phase 2.5 is shut down. Boom. So I call this environmentally and genetically induced intrahepatic cholestasis. So you could just tell your friends that you just learned a lecture on the environmentally genetically induced hepatic cholestasis, and how cool it is, and what it really means is that we have to make sure that we're not inflamed before we start revving up our detoxification. Before you start taking a bunch of glutathione, we better make sure that your gut is really, really taken care of. So the concept, inflammation shuts down the ability of phase 2 toxins to be excreted from the hepatocyte via bile to the small intestine. That's at phase 2.5. So make sure that, and we'll talk about strategies. That's the next slide. So we'll talk about the strategies on how to cut the inflammation. And then the other thing is that if you've had your genetics run, if you have that PEMT SNP, which I have a homozygous, and so do my children. Thanks, Mom. We have to make sure that if we can, we're eating a lot of eggs and foods that contain phosphatidylcholine, or that we're taking a product that has the phosphatidylcholine, else we will get bile stasis, that cholestasis, really quickly, and we don't want that. And then we have to make sure. So phase 3 is that if everything's running perfectly, let's just say that we're back at right here at this perfect liver cell, and everything's exiting out, and we're in the bile, and the bile is flowing through. We have to make sure that the phase 3, so once the toxins are in the gut via the bile, they need to not be reabsorbed into circulation via the colon. They need to get out. So in some cases, we have to use what's called binders. So binders, as the word implies, will bind those toxins in your gut to make sure that they're not being reabsorbed. And again, if you've been in the office, we have a shelf full of phase 3 binders. What's actually really exciting is that I presented this to a nutraceutical company that I work for. I do some lecturing and research for them. And I presented this to the president, this same PowerPoint. And he was so excited. He's never heard this. He's been in the supplement industry for 44 years. He's been in natural health for that long, and he has never heard of this concept before. And what he's doing for the Connors Clinic is he's actually we're going to be formulating our own phase 3 binders. So watch for that, because those are going to be really cool. And again, we typically test you to make sure this is happening, that we're lessening the inflammation. We do that in a couple different ways. So you're covered if you've been in. But again, if you have specific questions, you can always hit up Facebook or set up a consultation if you want to talk a little bit more about this. So the solutions to this is decrease inflammation first. So we talked about that before we start pushing these phase 1 and phase 2. Make sure that your gut is working well. Make sure that you're following the diet that you should be, because we eat no less than 3 times a day, and it's an immune response every time we eat, whether we like it or not. So making sure that we're eating really anti-inflammatory diet, and that alcohol can really give your gut a hit. So making sure that that's taken care of is super important. I like to use a little hydrogen water if I feel like I'm inflamed. Granted, that's not getting at the root cause. Usually it's because I had a donut or something. But hydrogen water is really good at cutting that inflammation. So is curcumin, and this last part stands for decreasing reactive oxygen species. So for instance, on my genetic testing, I always look for SOD, and I always look for hydrogen peroxide production. So sod would take care of the superoxide molecule, and that's a reactive oxygen species. So that's something that goes around and does damage and causes inflammation. So I just make sure from a couple different angles that we're covering someone's genetic predisposition to being inflamed, and that's a huge piece of genetics right there. You can see right in black and white if someone's going to be highly inflamed, and how we take care of that is case by case, and it's really personalized, which is really cool. The next solution is to optimize phosphatidylcholine status. So make sure that if you've had your genetics done, that you know if you have the PEMT SNP, and make sure that if you can't eat eggs, that you're Googling, you're asking Dr. Google what else you can do dietary wise. I'm a big fan of getting nutrients from food first. But if you need a good phosphatidylcholine supplement, sometimes we just have to do that. I take a PC supplement a couple times a week just to stay up on the bile flow, because again, I don't have a gallbladder, so I really have to make sure that I'm doing that. And then, you know, it's really cool. This is my spring cleaning. This is where you kind of go above and beyond, is to stimulate the bile flow. So you actually can do more to really push that liver directionality. And I like to use bitters. And what that supplement company, the nutraceutical company, is going to do is they're also going to formulate for us a blend of bitters from the Connor's Clinic that we're going to use to just liven up that bile flow. So stay tuned for that. I'm also a really big fan of visceral manipulation. I am not an expert by no means, but that's how you can get that bile flowing as well, using some visceral manipulation. And gallbladder cleanses are super fun, but they work. And if it's appropriate, you could do that. If you're not sure if you're a candidate, again, reach out to us and we'll let you know. We want to make sure, and I think this is the 9th time I've hit on this, is that we clean up our gut. We make sure that our gut's nice and tidy. We don't have an imbalance in flora in there. And, you know, that can be a big part of like the SIBO in the leaky gut. So just make sure that you're following your diet and you're trying to eat really clean. And the last solution is to optimize that phase 3. And I just think of bind. Just don't give those toxins a chance to get back in your bloodstream, because your body worked so hard to get them into your colon, to get them into that bile and out, that we just do not want to give them a chance to be reabsorbed. Bad things happen when they get reabsorbed. So that concludes the liver directionality PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to unmute everybody. Okay, guys, the floor is yours.
Well, I guess we can't go 1 week without asking for an update on the genetics testing.
So I just got off the phone with Bob Miller, and he's just waiting for the green light from Rutgers, who they are the big university that's going to be running the data, and he can't, his company can't release the test kits until they say so. So it's really out of his hands. I just keep praying, Dr. God, everybody's praying. So we were told, come heck or high water, the end of March. So tick, tick, tick. I mean, we still got till Friday. It's Wednesday. So, you know, there could be a miracle. So stay tuned.
Okay.
If we're detoxing with the saunas and the foot baths and everything, are we just recirculating toxins if our bile isn't flowing?
No, actually, so you'd be using the skin for the detoxification. So that would be okay. Mm-hmm. So you'd be bypassing. So even if you're inflamed, so that's why I really am a fan of infrared saunas. I'm a fan of sweating and foot baths, because let's say you are just inflamed from head to toe, just for a couple different reasons. The skin is still a good way to get those toxins out if appropriate.
Is there a foot bath that Connor's promotes?
Yeah, we like the True Rife foot bath because it's programmable, so you can use the frequencies. So if you go into your Rife computer, there's a folder called Ion Pro Wave, and that is the folder that you can look through all the programs that you can run your foot bath on. My family, we run our foot bath near daily of one of myself or my kids or someone. We just are really big fans of it.
So it's not a real foot bath then?
Yes, it is.
Well, I guess what's your definition of a foot bath then, I guess, if we got to go back to that?
Well, I thought you were saying you're running something on the computer. I'm thinking a foot bath is when you're soaking in a fluid.
Yeah, and so the Ion, if you go to the True Rife website, you can see a picture. So what it is, it's a device that you plug into where your actually, it's just on the front of it. It's the bottom right. There's a jack plug, and you plug it in there, and then you put the device into a foot bath, and then it runs it runs the frequencies through. So the detoxification one is excellent. I really love the Epstein-Barr, even for everyone, because Epstein-Barr is ubiquitous. So we really like running that one. You'd be surprised. They look like mud when you get done sometimes. So yeah.
Well, I'm sorry if I'm confused, but you have to buy a device in the foot bath?
Right. It's about $200, I believe. And it just plugs into your Rife, and you use the same computer, the same Rife. It's just an accessory.
Oh, okay. There's no chance of electrocution?
No, I know. That's a really good question. It really is kind of scary when you plug it in, but I've survived probably 50. So we've never had any issues with it. No one has. But you can call and order one you can order it online, or you can call and order it.
I've used it for Candida for about 10 days now, and my energy is just bleh. None. So am I doing too much?
Yep.
Yeah. How often should you do it if it's a chronic Candida that's been, deep-seated for about at least 20 years?
Well, I wonder if your Candida might not be related to what we just talked about. So the SIFO, the small intestinal fungal overgrowth, I wonder if we should focus on moving your bile a little bit better and focus on cleaning that up, doing the new protocol with the bitters where you're stimulating the bile flow, and then you're doing like a push catch. So the push would be the stimulation and the catch would be the binder. And just remember, when you're doing foot baths, that they're taking out bad stuff, but they're also can take out minerals too. So I always take a couple extra mineral capsules. We have a couple different brands that we like. I like Designs for Health off the top of my head. I just take a couple of those just to make sure that I'm not pulling out my minerals that my body needs, because you can get fatigued from that.
Similar to what we do for the saunas then?
Exactly.
Okay. And then can you run 2 programs in one day or no?
It depends which programs.
Okay. And then go back to the gallbladder frequencies on the Rife, the bulb then to help your gallbladder and bile salts?
Sure. You could use the Rife to support the gallbladder. So supporting the secretion, like if you're trying to support the hepatocyte to secrete in, that would be using bitters. So again, that's a product that we're formulating, and we will have that. Or you can just use traditional bitters as well.
You don't have a product here as yet, is that what you're saying?
We don't have it yet. Very soon.
So this is all new. The binders and the bitters are all new protocols for you, for Connor's Clinic.
Right.
Okay. So how do you know when your gallbladder is ready to do the push and catch and push?
That's a good question too. So, there's really no magic answer. I guess it would be, making sure that your inflammatory status is in check. So how do you make sure of that? Well, making sure that you've had a good diet for a while, and that you know, if you have genetic defects, that you may be a person who wants to take the hydrogen water, or you may be a person who really has to work on getting rid of hydrogen peroxide. So really, even though this is a quote unquote new protocol for us, it's more where we would have caught, you know, the part of cancer and part of disease states is inflammation. So that's not something that we missed on a case-by-case basis. And that's where the genetics come in, and that's where the cause of the cancer comes in. So really, if Dr. Connors or I have put you on turmeric or cumin or any of the products that help with inflammation, or if we told you to adjust your diet, those are a lot of things that we are proactively doing, because we've always known, even before we knew this phase 2.5 concept, we've always known that. And everybody who walks in our door and everybody who works at Connors Clinic, we all need work on our inflammation. And so that's kind of a tricky question, where it's, you know, we like to have people in the office kind of seeing where they're at, but could you try and, you know what I think? Here's what I think. Let me back up. I think that if you've ever had a reaction where, let's say you took some glutathione or you took a new supplement and you felt like garbage, it was probably because you were having a quote unquote Herc's reaction, because you were too inflamed. So I kind of just see where the person's at and just modify, you know, where you know, most people, if they've been in our office, if we've done your genetics, even if we haven't done your genetics and we've tested you out, you could probably give the bitters and the phase 3 binder a try. And at the same time, you could do maybe more of a really strict anti-inflammatory diet, where you're really just eating a ton of vegetables and just a little bit of meat, or, you know, just kind of modifying your diet a little bit more. That'll get your body started. That'll give it that push, like, okay, because, you know, it's like a cycle, like toxins get stuck in there and then they go back in the blood, and then so it's really trying to just swoop in and get things going.
Unfortunately, I'm always exposed to heavy metals in my body. Pond 1 and all those anti-inflammatory detox pathways are all messed up. Mm-hmm. I'm really safe at staying with the skin, but I don't know when to migrate to the others.
Mm-hmm. And that would be if you would just, let's say that you tried the bitters and you tried just eliciting them, so you could get that going and just see how you feel. A lot of the times we underestimate, or we don't value enough how we feel and when we're taking something. And that kind of goes back to that the presentation I did on the Goldilocks area. Our body's going to tell us a lot. So you know, when I started taking, let's just say, for instance, I got diagnosed with cancer in December, and I started taking the Nerf 2 product. So the Nerf 2 product is pushing phase 2, so it pushes it really hard. Well, what happened is I started to break out like a teenager, and I'm like, what is going on? Well, I know what was going on is that I pushed phase 2 and I was too inflamed, and so everything started going the wrong way for me, and I didn't feel good. So I stopped my phase 2. I stopped pushing that. I did some more turmeric. I really cut out all sugar, period, nothing even of the sorts, and went a little bit more keto. And then I went back on the Nerf 2 phase 2 detoxer, and things are going really well. So your body knows best.
Hopefully I can read it.
Yeah, right. I know it's difficult.
It's hard.
It is.
Well, is it safe to say that we're all better off not eating meat or having any sugar? Or, I mean, you know, not eating sugar, but I mean.
Well, I it's a pretty big statement, but I think that sugar is, I don't see a whole lot of benefit to it. But meat, I mean, that's a tougher one. But sugar, yeah, I think that it's inflammatory. There's not a whole lot of good things I could say about it, especially with cancer. So you don't want to drive the Warburg effect. You don't want to have, you know, cancers thrive on glycolysis. So some people have to really limit it down.
But you're talking about even the natural sugar in fruit?
Yeah, to an extent. So some people with, with some of those genetic defects where the cancer just sucks every, sugar molecule up, they need to go more ketogenic or they need to go more plant-based, but to not drive that glucose pathway. But not everybody.
In the gallbladder cleanses, is it, do you have to watch out for pancreatic inflammation of the pancreas?
Yeah, you want to be careful if you have, yep. Mm-hmm. Or if you have.
How do you know which one to choose that wouldn't be too aggressive, shall we say?
For the pancreatic, when you have pancreatic inflammation, and then you're going to
when
try.
you go for your gallbladder cleanse.
For your gallbladder cleanse, I really like to stick with the gentle ones that use the olive oil. So I can post the one that is our go-to for most people. Mm-hmm. I'll post that on Facebook.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Kelly?
Yes.
I do a lot of saunas, a lot of infrared saunas, and I do an enema every day.
Good.
And I have, not all the time, but a couple times a week, I will notice that I have spots on my hand and arm that kind of look like bruises beginning, but they're like pencil head, or not pencil head, but eraser head. That's about the size they are.
Uh-huh.
And then in a couple days, they'll go away. I'm also starting to get like streaks, kind of. I mean, it doesn't look like blood poisoning or anything, but just red marks actually on my breast where the tumor is.
Uh-huh.
So is this maybe an indication that I'm not, because I'm detoxing through my skin, is what I think I hear you saying.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Is one of my pathways messed up because I get so much of this? And then also every once in a while, I'll smell ammonia.
Okay. Will you smell it your skin or your urine or what?
Like when I'm in the sauna.
When you're in the
it's gotta be
sauna.
from my sweat.
Do you eat meat?
Not much. I do eat some.
Okay.
All grass-fed if I eat anything.
Okay. Yeah, so it sounds like you're definitely moving through your skin a lot, and there's some people who just have a greater amount of detox through their skin, so we're all a little bit different. So if you notice that, though, that could be an indication that you would want to make sure that if you think that you're still slightly inflamed, just kind of take a look at several different areas and just kind of, is there something you want to add in, like turmeric, or is there something you want to take away? Do you want to back down a little bit on your phase, or if you're on any phase 1 or phase 2 pushers, you want to maybe back down on those a little bit. You could just be overwhelming your body's ability to do that, or you might want to add in a binder, but you're doing so. That's why we're really sticklers on trying to keep everyone really hydrated and going to the bathroom, having a bowel movement as much as possible, because we want to keep those toxins moving out. So I really like that you're doing the enemas. You might just want to kick it up to, if you can, maybe 2 a day and see what happens to your skin. Just see if that's a better way of starting. That seems kind of easy. And then with the ammonia, I like to do to just make sure that we're not consuming a lot of meat, because that'll stress those ammonia urea detox pathways. So I'd start there.
Okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know if we're inflamed, and what would be the appropriate amount of turmeric to take every day?
Well, I just, as a general rule, I like a gram a day. So I think that's what's in our Curcu Clear product from Connor's Clinic. And again, sometimes we have to look at lifestyle a little bit harder before we look at pills. But I take the curcumin myself. So I would just make sure that that your diet's looking really good, that you're in balance with the lifestyle things first. But it's just a really tough question to answer. Like, how do we know if we're inflamed or not? I mean, could be a couple, I mean, you could look at labs and you could know your CRP is one of your best markers for inflammation. If your CRP is elevated, then you are inflamed. So, for anybody who really wants to kind of check this out, you could go to your doctor and get a CRP and run it by Dr. Connors and I. That would be, or we could run it for you. That would be the telltale sign of inflammation. If you have brain fog or, pardon?
Regular blood test? Blood work?
It's typically not in quote unquote regular blood work, but it's pretty cheap, and every doctor should know what CRP is. So it's a good marker to just see what's going on. But if you're not doing your best yet, if you're not doing your best with the lifestyle stuff, with diet and making sure you're getting some exercise if you can, and fresh air and all that, do that stuff first. Do that stuff and just make sure. And then, but if you think you're doing absolutely the best possible job, then go ahead, check your CRP and see where you're at.
What does that stand for?
It stands for C-reactive protein.
Oh,
Dr. Kelly?
Yeah.
I was wondering about an atomizer with the rice and grounding it.
Okay. With grounding the rife itself, like using a grounding sheet?
Well, I was looking at the instructions and it put together a pad, and I heard Dr. Connors say in a discussion where somebody wanted to put one on their whole bed. He said, well, just use like half if you're going to use it. But it's a new one, but I just ran across that pad that you would put your feet on, and I just thought I'd ask if I mean, I'm doing fine with the rife. I use it all the time.
Sure.
I don't use the ground, and yeah, I shock my wife every once in a while, and she shocks me.
I think there was a really nice discussion. If you go to the Facebook page, if you're on that, if you go to the Facebook page and you type in on the search bar grounding, I think that they really went through in depth. Dr. Connors shared like the pluses and minuses. So I really think it's preference. Now I have a grounding sheet, but I, like Dr. Connors said in the Facebook discussion, I only have it at the bottom of my bed. So I'm not sleeping on the whole thing. So it's positive because you're grounding, which is great. And it's negative because it's taking some of the right frequencies from you a little bit. So, see what you can get off of the Facebook page, and then if you don't get your answer, post again, and we'll answer it for you again.
Okay, and to atomize the air in a room with the rice. Have you ever tried that?
I actually personally have not tried that, so that would be a good post for Facebook to see what others are doing with that.
I think that's another attack.
Okay.
Accessory?
Yeah, I believe so. Okay.
I just learned here. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, guys, do we have any more questions at all? I know it's a really high level topic, so it's really cool that so many of you were able to join tonight. And really the big point is that we just want to respect the way the body detoxes, and if we're going to be doing any sort of spring detox, talk to us. Just make sure you're not pushing when you're inflamed, because if you start doing, like, let's say you're just going to start taking a bunch of glutathione and then you feel just terrible, that's a reason why. So be on the lookout for the binder and the bitters, and then we'll do another webinar on that, on like how you'd want to do that, and we'll do that in the next couple weeks on and what would that look like, and who would want to do that, and how you do it. So if there are no other questions,
Dr. Kelly, it's Christina.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, Christina.
Okay. I just have a question regarding MRIs. My oncologist would like to do a follow-up MRI. Since I was just diagnosed in January, I think she wants two, kind of for a baseline for size of tumor. My preference was to request an ultrasound, and she has really made it clear that she would like an MRI. I'm not crazy about having the contrast, but I was kind of wondering if you would just weigh in and give me your feedback, like, it's okay, go ahead for the baseline. Is there something I should know to be able to detox the contrast that I would get? Is it not a good idea to have repeat MRIs? I'm just kind of curious, being new to the whole imaging stuff.
Sure. So that's a really great point, Christina, is that we have to weigh risk benefits. So, definitely doctors, when I wore those shoes and wore that white coat walking in the hospital, you didn't really put much thought into, I would say, the sequela of having the contrast with these different scans and what the knowledge that you'd get from an MRI versus an ultrasound. That the MRIs are much more, they're able to, with less margin of error, tell you how big your tumors are. So if you want to get down to more specific, more accurate measurements, that's what she's probably looking at. She knows you can see it with ultrasound, but there's a margin of error in what they can actually measure, and then the reproducibility of an ultrasound is much smaller. It's not as good as an MRI. But I agree with you, is that it's not without issues to have the contrast. And I would first ask her if they could possibly, if she doesn't want to hear at all about the ultrasound, and you could put on the table an MRI without contrast and just see what she thinks and kind of ask her the pros and cons. We do have homeopathic remedies for the some of the contrast dyes. You'd want to just make sure you're super hydrated, make sure that you're just taking care of your diet before and after. There's just lots of, if you can juice, that would be really good before and after. Keep your detox pathways moving. So.
And is the homeopathic remedy or support that you have to offer, is it specific to the type of contrast? Is that important for me to know, or is it a general just detox?
So as far as I know, I am more familiar with the radiation, with that homeopathic remedy. I'm gonna have to phone a friend who is Dr. Connors.
Okay.
I'll ask him, and then we'll post that too.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
All right, I will definitely explore with her if we can do it without contrast. That'd be my preference. But if she feels that information is valuable, then I will definitely watch for your post about what to get for helping that pathway. Thank you.
Perfect. Great question, Christina. Thank you.
My quick question was, what did you say about what you do to compensate for not having a gallbladder?
Sure. So at first I used ox bile. So I used pretty much a supplement that had the bile in it to make sure that that I was absorbing my fats, but really that's no replacement whatsoever. So what I do is I make sure that I have that phosphatidylcholine optimized, and I make sure that I am doing a lot of gallbladder flushes, and I'm using bitters. So like I've used bitters for a long time, and I use them in streaks just to keep that actual hepatocyte like flowing, that liver directionality flowing. So, structurally what happens is that the common bile duct kind of starts to get pouchy, and it's like a surrogate or like a false gallbladder. So it's not the biggest deal if you don't have a gallbladder. I mean, there's how many millions of us poor souls walking around, but and it's everyone's different. So that's my answer.
But the bitters, that you don't offer them yet, but where could we get them? Just any like health food store? Or?
I think health food store carries them. It's basically like dandelion and myrrh and genetian. Those are a couple good bitters. Anything that literally tastes really bitter will help you move your bile. So, but we're going to have one that actually has some phosphatidylcholine in it. So even if you have perfect phosphatidylcholine making ability, it's still a really good idea to have it in there. So
getting the bile flow, if you have flukes or parasites blocking it, how do you know that?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't. And I wonder if when we use kinesiology, if the flukes would come up first, because we'd have to get rid of those. I mean, your bodies are designed to get rid of those. So, you know, really working on trying to expel the toxins. But I think you'd have to address the flukes first if you were diagnosed with them. But then again, if you get your body working the way God designed it, I mean, they're going to be taken care of.
Okay.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure. If you have any other questions based on this or anything that kind of popped into your mind, feel free to post on Facebook. I'll be monitoring that, and I will share some of the things we talked about, and we'll have this as a live recording in a couple hours.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Well.
All right,
Thank you.
bye-bye.